youth, tear upon the core of blasphemy. Follow your prophet, and on evil make a victory. Let our righteousness be a role model to our children, making new generations of believers decently upbringing, with parents as an example. As gems we shape them, fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum, peace. Welcome to Closing the Gap. I'm your host, Omar Dunlop. We have with us, of course, Sheikh Yusuf Estes. Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam rahmatullah. Sheikh, it appears today that there's a big gap between belief and unbelief, which we've been covering in previous episodes, but an issue facing Muslims in particular is the gap between Islam, belief in Islam, and other religions. So would you care to elaborate on that for us?
Before we started this program, I told you choose the topic for this particular episode and let me just see what I could do with it. Because I didn't want to prepare anything ahead other than what I already know from background, Islam, Christianity, and so on. So you, I don't know how you did it, but you picked exactly the best topic, I think, for me. Because this is all I know. In my years on this planet, that's what I know about is Christianity and Islam and these belief things, because I'm always thinking about what do I believe, what do I believe.
Right.
You picked the greatest, I think, challenge here. Let us consider, first of all, belief itself versus no belief in anything. If you have a belief in a deity, some kind of a god or gods, then you have something that you look forward to or hope for, something to blame your problems on, or something to turn to hope for a better condition. In one of our programs, we spoke about the fear of a loss and hope of a reward, to gain or to lose. And this is what a human being's psyche works off of. I want to get something, but I don't want to lose something at the same time. And this is how we're built. This is what's inside of us. So what we believe will drive us to move or not move in the direction of our fears or our hopes. Along with that, when somebody doesn't have a belief in a deity, then whatever happens, they believe to be by chance. Just by chance. There's nothing there. It just happened. It is not consistent with any pattern of anything. It just happened. The whole universe came about by accident. Everything came about by coincidence. There's no pattern. There's no design. But then you run into a problem. The more you look at the design of everything through a telescope, you'll find this pattern of spheres, of orbs, going in orbits in different patterns in solar systems. And then when you look in a microscope and you look down closely, you observe, oh my God, look, the same thing that we saw in the telescope, in the heavens, we're now seeing like this here under the microscope. Both of these things are not available to the naked eye, but with optic assistance, we're able to see these things and discover, as we are, these molecules, talking about atoms, neutrons, and electrons, and protons. How does all of that work? How do these orbs and spheres happen? What's making all of this work? And so when the scientists really begin to eliminate these incredible suppositions and theories for the things that's more in favor of what's provable, testable evidence, they begin to say, oh my God, there's a pattern, there's a design, and ultimately there's places where there's no precursor to this thing. It came in existence at this time and we don't know how it got there. Therefore, there must be ID, intelligent design. And when you come up against that, okay, now what are you going to say? So some of these scientists have opted not to believe in God, but to say that there was something intelligent behind all of this, and somehow it permeates the universe, and let it go at that. This is more in line with the Hindu belief that God is in everything. Now, the belief in Islam, let's define this belief. In Islam, there is the belief that there is a deity who created everything. He created it out of nothing by His will. He commanded it to be, and it was exactly as He wants it to be. But He is not the creation. He is not in the creation. He does not permeate the creation. Because of this, you're able to make this resolution between atheism, and some of these false beliefs out here for the creationists. Let's take a couple of those hypotheses and see where it goes. A couple of millenniums ago, during the time of the great Greek philosophers, there were those who believed. Plato, by the way, was a believer. Socrates was a believer. For the benefit of those who believed that they were atheists, go back and read. They absolutely were not atheists. In fact, none of these great scholars were atheists, but they didn't accept some of the beliefs of various people for their own reasons. One of the tests that was thrown out in those days, I have a book, a translation from it. It's about this thick, talking about these different beliefs. One of the things that was a challenge to those who believe, do you believe in God? Yes. Okay. Can your God do anything? Yes. Can your God make a rock so big nothing could move it? Yes. Even He can't move it? There's the challenge. But the challenge is more of a mental one than a real one, because the one making the challenge is defining both the rock, the God, and the verb to move. You follow that? So by his definition, he thinks he has stumped you. Can your God make a rock so big nothing can move it? Yes, He can. Okay. Even He can't move it? Well, no, He can move it. Then He can't make a rock so big that nothing can move it. Okay, He can. Okay, so now He can't move the rock. When this question came to me was not when I read the book. The first time it came to me was I was challenged by somebody in the mall where I worked about this. They were atheists. They knew I was a believer, and they shook me up. I just didn't know where to go. I went home. I talked to my dad, who was also an ordained minister, and I talked to him about the subject. He said, it doesn't matter. I said, what do you mean? He said, it doesn't matter what God can create or not create. It doesn't matter what God moves or doesn't move. What do you really care? You know there's God, don't you? Okay, so leave it. And that's how I had to leave it. From then, which was 1969, until 1991 when I got the answer. The answer came in Islam. Very beautiful answer. Muhammad Abdurrahman, the one who brought me to Islam, said it so clear. When I brought the question to him, now keep in mind I'm trying to convert him to Christianity, why would I even bring the question up? Because he answered everything else. I said, well, let me throw the hardest question I know. Can your God do anything? He said, yes. I said, anything? He said, yes. Can He make something so big nothing can move it? He said, yes. I said, even He can't move it? He said, your question has a problem with it. I went, huh? He said, your question has a problem. How are you defining God, and how are you defining this word to move? I said, what do you mean? For us, we have the expression, Allahu ala kulli shayin qadir. What does that mean? Usually people translate it to mean what? Allah is able to do anything. That's usually how they translate this phrase. Yes?
Right.
But actually in Arabic it doesn't say that. It said Allah is capable of doing whatever He wants to do. He has the power to do what He wills. Got it? So if you said He can do anything, could He be a man? Well, Christian will say, yeah, He was a man. He walked on the earth and He was God and man at the same time, and a spirit and a God and a Holy Ghost and a Father and a Son all at the same time, and knew all languages, did all things because He's God and la 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 la.
Right.
Of course, then you'd have to wonder about some of the texts that they got in the Bible where their so-called God is asking the other so-called God, don't put me on the cross, let this cup pass from me. And then when He's on the cross going, God, God, why'd you do this to me? It's kind of like, what's that all about? But never mind, it's not our job to get into that philosophy or their theoretical problems that they're dealing with. But to come back to this subject of how do you resolve the question? The question's incorrect. Because you have made God be a part of the creation. Allah is not part of the creation. Can Allah make something so big nothing can move it in the creation? Yes. Can He make something so big that nothing can move it? Even He can't move it. Oh, you got a problem now. Allah doesn't move stuff the way we move stuff. You're divining this word. You're saying that this word move is something He does. This would mean you think that He has to go get a lever, a fulcrum, and have this energy that goes down that offsets, and this is not how Allah works. Clearly, even in the Bible today and in the Quran, whenever Allah wants anything to be done, He says, be, and it is, kun fayakun. That's how Allah works. So nothing will ever move it until He wants it moved, and then it will be moved. Now, if you said, well, could He ever do something that's illogical? Then the answer is no. Could He ever become a man? He won't.
Right.
Could Allah do something against His own nature? He won't. He's already told us He won't do that.
Right.
He is the epitome of His characteristics. This is how we define Him. Not by a physical standard, but a characteristic of His behavior, what He does, what He doesn't do, and what He wants done and what He doesn't want done. This is how we define Him. For instance, we say He is Ar-Rahman. He is the mercy. He's not saying He's merciful. He's the mercy. He is the patient. Don't say He has patience. He is the patient. He is Al-Wadud. Don't say He has love. He is love. Ing. Continual, not past tense of the verb. He is constantly Al-Wadud. That's one of His names, or attributes, or characteristics. These characteristics are not defining Him in a physical sense in a physical world. They are saying what He said about Himself, and we don't add to or take away from what He said. Because if we did, then we're making up our own God. Make sense?
Right, right. Well, Sheikh, we're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. You're watching Closing the Gap.
Fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
Tech Talk. We're going to look how to create a website and which Islamic websites to actually visit. What inspired you to create your own website?
One of the challenges that we face every day, the site or the application should be accessible worldwide. I remember when I was younger, one of my friends asked me to convince his father to get him a desktop, even the laptop. If you compare both of them in terms of cost, laptop roughly costs twice the money if you compare it with the desktop.
Hackers, the word hackers, most of the youth people are very interested about that word. They say, hey, I'd like to be a hacker. Because there is a type of hacker, great, doing great job. We call them white hat hacker.
Fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
Bismillah, welcome back to Closing the Gap. I'm your host, Omar Dunlop. We have with us Sheikh Yusuf Estes. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Omar.
Sheikh, today we're discussing the gap between Islam as a faith and other faiths. So we want to move it more into the direction of how does Islam close the gap between itself and other faiths?
We've been talking in general up to now really about disbelief itself. But then when we started talking about some of the other faiths, we were going to see a problem because they would not be able to answer the question we mentioned in the first part. Let's go to another question that also faced these Greek theologians of their time and see how other faiths dealt with it, and then see how does Islam deal with this question. It asks the question, do you believe in God? Yes. So God exists? Yes. Where is God? For the vast majority of people who have never reflected on this, yet they believe there's a God, if you ask them, where is God? Everywhere. I found this answer to be consistent amongst Christians and Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims even, some Muslims. This answer everywhere. Now, from Buddhists, I did find some saying God is within me. He exists only within me. This is what I heard from a lot of the Buddhists. From the Hindus, I heard clearly God is in every single thing. There's nothing except God is in it. From Christians, I heard some say, well, God's still on the cross, which is weird. Some said God is with Jesus and they're, in the clouds, and some said in heaven, and some said different things. But for the most part, the answer was God's everywhere. Immediately, though, going back to the atheist who's throwing that question out, he will say, well, is your God really everywhere? Okay, and you say, yeah, all right. So if God is everywhere, is he in the heavens? Oh, yeah. In the clouds? Yeah. Rainbows? Oh, yeah. Mountains and rivers and streams and trees and flowers and bees and birds and the toilet? Toilet? Oh, no. My God's not in the toilet. Nuclear waste? No, he's not in nuclear waste. In the HIV AIDS virus? Oh, no way he's in the Nile virus. No, not in there. So tell me the places where your God is and where he isn't. And then by your definition, that means I could actually pick up part of your God and like kick him around or something, huh? So what is that? So do I have power over your God? How does that work? So now all of a sudden it throws people away because when they tried to test what they thought, it didn't work. So what does Islam say about it? Again, it tells us clearly, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. He's not a father God like Christians might assert. He's not a son God like some others might say. There is no father-son relationship because God doesn't have any genealogy. So let's put that out of the way. But then it comes to the best one of all for all the other faiths out there. Jews and Christians, by the way, are claiming this sonship. You find it Old Testament, New Testament. But when you look clearly to other faiths that don't claim sonship or fathership, they still put God in the creation. Pantheism, it denies it. It says there is nothing like him in the creation. Nowhere, no way, he's ahad. Now some translate that as one, but wahid in the Arabic language is one. Ahad is a one that's so unique there's no two going to come after it. So English doesn't have that word, so we have to use another word. We say unique. But it's a one, it's a oneness unique, because there could be a unique group, but this is a one, unique unto itself, nothing like. And that's one of his characteristics or names that he doesn't change. Right. He says he is wahid, one, and ahad, which is unique. So understanding that, we start going, well, wait a minute, if he's not like everything, what else do we know about him? Well, he tells us in the Quran, هو الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في ستة أيام ثم استوى على العرش. That he is the one who created everything in the beginning, the heavens and the earth in 6 yawm, periods of time, which we've mentioned before. He created it, but then he said, ثم, then استوى, stationed himself على العرش, over his throne. How? We didn't know. We don't say he lays down, he falls asleep, he goes, oh man, that was a lot of work, I don't know. This is not like that. We don't have a resting God, sleeping God, tired God. This is mentioned in chapter 2, verse 255 of the Quran, called Ayatul Kursi. I invite people to go and read this for themselves. Chapter 2, verse 255. Allahu la ilaha illahu al-hayyul qayyum. Read it for yourself and see what you think about this beautiful, beautiful teaching. God is not like his creation. He is unlike anything in the creation. He is independent and free from any need. And another word that he has, and that surah that I read to you, chapter 112, the first part of it, it says, A'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad. What are we talking about? Say he is Allah. He is uniquely one, which we had at the end of the verse, and he is a samad. What is samad? Samad is so independent that it doesn't need anything, and yet all the creation eternally needs him. Let's read the whole thing and listen to it. Chapter 112, almost at the end of the Quran, called Surah Ikhlas, the Surah of Sincerity. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Say, He is Allah, the uniquely one, eternally sought after by all creation, through forever, for sustenance, but He doesn't need to be sustained. He is not the father of anything. He's not the son of anything. He's not like anything. He's so uniquely one.
SubhanAllah. And you know, the oneness of God, the oneness of Allah, what we call the Tawheed.
Tawheed from the word one.
Right.
Wahid. Tawheed. Wahid.
That's beautiful in and of itself, isn't it?
Yeah. It
really
is. This is the key. This is the key that really opens your heart. This is what brought me really into Islam. I was sitting with one of the beautiful sheikhs last night, and we were talking about Abu Ishaq, maybe you heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
And he and I were discussing this and what the effect it had on me when Muhammad Abdul Rahman first read this to me when we were riding down the road together in Texas. And when he was reading it, he was going to just tell me the meaning. He said, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. I said, no, go slow. Read it again slowly. And when he did, it had such an effect on me. I started crying. He said, why are you crying? I said, I don't know these words. And then when Abu Ishaq was in the United States back in 1993, I didn't know I'd met him then, but I had. And the same thing happened again. And we cried when we heard these words. We didn't even know what it meant. But the Quran's words speak to the heart, not just to the brain, to the heart. Open your heart. Wallah, if I could give anybody any advice right now, I would say, open your heart. Your heart is the doorway to the mind. The mind is the doorway to the soul. The soul will make it happen, but you've got to open that heart. You must open it up, and let the truth of Islam come. The truth of La ilaha illallah, none to worship except Allah. Accept that and move forward. This is my advice.
SubhanAllah, it's a very beautiful advice. Well, Sheikh, how does Islam, we have a few minutes left, so how does Islam bridge the gap between Muslims and non-Muslims?
One of the beautiful things that Islam teaches us is that the Christians are the closest to us in belief. So I disagree with the idea that an atheist is close to us simply because he says, La ilaha. He says there is no God. So I don't consider that close to us just because he said half the kalima. In fact, I like to work with the Christians much more than trying to deal with the atheists, because they're insulting to God, insulting to themselves, disrespectful in many ways. Whereas I find from the Christians a lot of respect, dignity, and when we dialogue together, I find that they have many things in common, which is what Allah tells us in Surah Al-Imran. Clearly, if you want to find out how close the Christians are, we find that even today there are some amongst them that are believers. We find that in the Quran, that from them are believers, but most of them are fasiq, disobedient. And I've showed this to preachers and priests, and they've told me the same thing. Yes, they say, my congregation is just like what your Quran said they are. Some believers, but most of them are disobedient, breaking the laws of Allah.
Well, I think that comes back to what sort of credence you give the book of that religion. This is something, we're both former Christians, now Muslim, and I noticed a lot of times that I will point a verse out to a Christian from his Bible and say, you know, this contradicts what you are telling people to believe. And he'll say, well, that's interesting, and you know, he'll go on about his business, and he doesn't change his view at all. But if I do the same thing to a Muslim, I show him from the Quran, you know, you've been doing this, and the Quran says this, he'll say, well, then it must be true, and he'll adapt himself to his book. So do you have a comment on that?
A funny comment. A Baptist preacher one time was sitting with me, a good friend. We were sitting together, and I said, I'm not a Baptist, but I would like to know, what does the Baptist church believe? What do you guys believe? What's your actual creed?
Right.
He said, well, we believe this, we believe this, we believe this, the church believes this, we believe. I said, wait a minute, why did you distinguish between we and the church? He said, well, I actually don't believe this.
SubhanAllah.
Whatever I don't remember the item now. I said, wait a minute, but the church says, he said, yeah, but it's not necessary really to believe all of it. I said, how do you preach a religion where you don't believe all of it? He goes, it doesn't matter. So the main thing is people come, they get saved, and that's it. That's what he said.
Right, SubhanAllah. Well, we have about a minute left, Sheikh, so if you want, you can give some final advice to our viewers, inshallah.
I've really enjoyed being with you, Omar, and working on this
Being with
project.
you.
And I wish, you know, that the people would take time to reflect on what we're really talking about. Not just to be challenging. We enjoy the challenge and criticism, constructive criticism, but open your own heart. I keep saying that again and again and again. This is not between you and me, and this is the advice I was given by the person, the last minute of my being non-Muslim. He said these words to me. I was non-Muslim.
Oh, your last
I was
minute
not
of being
Muslim.
non-Muslim.
Yeah, in my last moments, he said these words to me. This is not about you and me. It's not about you and your wife. It's not about you and your father. It's about you and your God. You need to go talk to him. And that's the way he left me. I said, what kind of salesman is this? He should be trying to close the deal. No. And I went out behind my father's house, and I did what I'd seen the Muslim do, put his head on the ground toward the east, and in that position, head on the ground, I said these words, "Oh God, guide me." And that is exactly what I said, and that's exactly what he did. And to this moment, I constantly ask for that guidance, again and again and again. And again, I see it happening around me. Well, things that I ask for in my heart happen. One quick example. Yesterday I heard my wife say, I prayed to Allah for it to rain. And I said, where? She said, here. I said, in Egypt it doesn't rain, okay? Never, almost never, very seldom they get rain. She said, I would like to see it rain. And subhanAllah, you know what happened? It rained.
It rained all night and all this morning. Yep.
Of course you could say it's a coincidence.
Yeah. Allah. Well, Sheikh, that's all the time we have for us today. And we would like to encourage our viewers to continue watching Huda and send us any feedback that you have. And of course, Sheikh Yusuf Estes, would you like to mention any of your websites for the viewers before we go out of here? Anything they can stay in contact with you?
GuideUs.tv.
Okay, so guideus.tv. You can find me on Facebook. That's about it. And so continue watching Huda TV, and you'll still see a lot more of us, inshallah. Until then, I'm your host, Omar Dunlop, wishing you peace. Assalamu alaikum.
O youth, tear upon the core of blasphemy. Follow your prophet, and on evil make a victory. Let our righteousness be a role model to our children, making new generations of believers decently upbringing, with parents as an example. As gems we shape them, fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for